Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to this super special episode of the Just an Editor podcast. This one is a little bit shorter, but I was recently invited to interview the editor of the amazing film Everything Everywhere All at Once, Paul Rogers. So join me and jump in to this awesome interview where I get to ask him all kinds of stuff. He doesn't have any socials. So what you can do, I say it at the end of the episode, but I'll say it right here too. What you can do to thank Mr. Rogers is to see that film. It is amazing. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you have, see it again because it is so good. Anyway, let's get to the meat of this interview and I'll see you on the other side.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. When I got the email, I was amazed because the movie has just like absolutely blown up on my Twitter feed. It's been crazy to see.
That's great. That's what we hoped for. But you never know with these type of things, especially when you're taking as big of a swing as the Daniels took with this movie. It
Mhm.
it can either hit really hard, like it is, or it can really confuse people, like your parents and your grandparents, who are like, what the hell is this?"
Yeah, exactly. It's such a cliche question, but I do have to ask it. How are you feeling as the movie, it seems, has gotten more of a wide release? At least my Twitter feed has just gotten more and more of like, you have to go see this film. I mean, the
Yeah,
tomato meter's at like 96 still, and
yeah.
audience is at like 94. It's crazy. So how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it is crazy. We keep thinking that that stuff will kind of even out, that the
Mhm.
ratings will go down into a more normal area. But it just doesn't seem to be happening, even with the right wide release this past week. I've said it in a couple other interviews, but this is the reaction I think we all daydreamed about and hoped for, but then ha- kept ourselves in check and told
Mhm.
ourselves, let's be realistic. That kind of reception is really hard to come by, and so it's been strange actually to see it this way,
Yeah.
received this way, but just really, really wonderful and heartwarming, especially the reactions that talk about people who are going with their parents and having these
Mhm.
really beautiful moments. A friend of mine who's a therapist told me that some of her clients brought it up in a session, and that it had helped them, uncover some things about their own relationship. That
Mhm.
kind of stuff is incredible and really, really heartwarming. Because there was a moment during our when we first screened the first rough cut,
Mhm.
middle of the first lockdown. Uh, and Wayman gives his speech about we have to be kind to each other, especially when we don't know what's going on. I became really emotional,
Mhm.
and was like, God, I wish the world could see this movie right now because it could be such a healing thing for people.
Mhm.
And so 2 years later, for it to have come out and have that healing effect on certain people is incredible.
Yeah, that speech specifically, it is so it's one of those serendipitous things where it's just hitting and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like this is such
Yeah,
a like right perfect place and time for
yeah.
that to hit." It's
I
amazing.
mean, I think it is. I also think that Dan and Daniel wrote a script that honestly would have hit at any time.
Mhm.
It's just it's a script about kindness and love and accepting ourselves and each other in really dark circumstances. And let's be honest, like the world is usually a pretty dark place. So I think that you know, this movie could come out 5 years from now or 5 years ago, and it would still, I think, have hit
Still hit it the
the same
same.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So going back to like the very beginning of your involvement in the project, one of the things that I was thinking about while I was sitting here watching this movie, knowing that I'd get to talk to you, which was like, how early were you brought in to the project? And was it kind of a normal timeline for you as the editor, or were you brought in earlier or later than you thought? Because watching it, the editing, I mean, every movie revolves around editing, but even more so, it feels like in this film, just with the different realities you're dealing with and everything, it feels like editing is such a integral part of this film.
Yeah, it is, and a through line with everything that the Daniels do, and they're both really, really talented editors.
Oh.
So they they came up in the period where everybody was doing everything. Like
Mhm.
if you want to make a music video, you know, as a young director with a very limited budget, like aside from tricking your friends into helping you, like they were editing all their own stuff for years and years and years before the first thing I did for them was Turn Down for What. If you look at their catalog of work before Turn Down for What, it's all incredible because
Wow.
they cut it all.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they have a lot of faith in the editing process, and I have the same thing. Like I always think you can make anything incredible in editing. There's just your options are limitless. But I was brought into this. I don't remember if I was brought on board officially, but they pitched it to me a couple of years before they shot it, um, and that pitch was just incredible, and I was moved to tears and was just hoping that I would have an opportunity to work on it, and so when I got the word that I was gonna work on it, I was so ecstatic, and I started actual work on it the day they started shooting. So
Oh,
I was
nice.
doing, assemblies of scenes for them,
Mhm.
really just making sure that they just wanted to make sure that what they were doing in certain scenes was tracking and was working. Um, and then, once we got into the actual offline, we were hit with lockdown like a week later or something. So
Oh gosh.
what I thought would be this kind of like dreamy, fun experience of sitting in a room with my two buddies and laughing and working on a film, eating good food and having drinks turned out to be like me crammed to my living room because I didn't have a home office with my kids behind my son behind me and my wife eating dinner, trying to work on something on headphones on a Zoom call with Dan and Daniel.
Oh my
But it
god.
ended up being really wonderful and yeah.
Awesome. Like, kind of on the same topic,
Mhm.
we talk about on this show a lot with editors, kind of finding the movie or the show or whatever, kind of
Yeah.
in the edit and how it evolves. This movie, very similar to the last question, feels like it was simultaneously very structured, like
Mhm.
before in the edit, but it also feels very improv in moments and very deadpan, like almost, I was telling my friends, almost like Rick and Morty interdimensional cable type situations
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on in this. So, like, how much of the film did you guys just find and you were like, this would be amazing? We've got to make this cut like this.
yeah.
Or how much of that, was surprisingly all planned that way?
I mean, it's funny at this point. It's hard to remember exactly because
Mhm.
we spent a year in the edit, and then that was 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
um, they went into everything with a plan and with a solid plan, but they are very very open and excited about experimentation.
Mhm.
And I guess like what you were saying, improv as much as you can editorially improv. Uh,
Yeah.
they love to be surprised, and I love to surprise them. Um, so there was a lot of that,
Mhm.
and yeah, there was a lot of discoveries that we made in the edit about even just how to get from universe to universe. Like they knew that we would figure it out in the edit, and so they shot a lot of stuff really intentionally,
Mhm.
but also just left it up for discovery, which was really really fun. And we did have a ton of fun just experimenting with how we're going to go back and forth, how far we can push it.
Mhm.
How loud should it be versus how quiet should it be? How much should we assault the viewer with these transitions versus how much can we hold their hand and kind of gently guide them? And so we ended up kind of bouncing back and forth,
Mhm.
even in the final film with that, and yeah, the spirit of experimentation with Dan and Daniel is just it's nonstop. I mean, you get it when you're around them. They're just constantly throwing out ideas and being silly and that comes through on set and it comes through in the edit and I'm sure it came through in the mix and it's just such a big part uh, of their working way.
Yeah, it for sure comes through through the experimentation and everything in the theater 100%. That's
Great.
on my little list of things that I thought to talk about. One of the things, I'm a sucker for transitions,
Uh-huh.
and the obvious one I think most people will get, but one of my favorite ones was the hand grabbing Evelyn
Yeah.
through universes. And then another one of the things that I wanted to touch on was the kind of unique use of aspect ratios in the film,
Uh-huh.
and how you guys kind of approach that, because it going different universes, going different timelines.
Yeah.
So what were y'all's kind of thought process in approaching, okay, we're going to evolve the aspect ratio
Yeah.
as the situation changes?
Well, that was planned from pre-production through the
Hmm.
shoot, and with Larkin Siepel, the DP. So they were shooting for the different aspect ratios. So it was easy for me, really. I knew which universes were which aspect ratio, and the only experimentation in that regard for us in the edit was how do we, if whether it's a hard cut or occasionally in the movie we have them kind of slowly transition.
Hmm.
Um, but that being said, it was always fun to do, and it's just an exciting way of playfulness. It's an exciting spirit of playfulness that I think helps put people in the right mindset for this film of
Yeah.
we're playing with these genre conventions and we're playing with these tropes, and we're going to use these to help guide you so that you know what movie you're in at any given point. Now it's an action movie, now it's a family drama, now it's a horror movie,
Hmm.
and hopefully it did its job, and subconsciously just helped orient people so they felt grounded and they felt like they knew what kind of movie they were watching at any given moment, uh, without it just feeling like a mishmash of genres that made no sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's You mentioned that you knew which universes go with which aspect ratio. Probably my nerdiest question of the thing: what was your organization like? Because I cannot imagine this timeline. Were you
Yeah.
were you a messy editor, or are we talking
Oh, I'm
color
a very
coding?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I will say I'm a messy editor, and it's
Mhm.
my assistant editors Zoe Mao and Ashish DeMello are heroes for dealing with that. I've tried to get better. The feature I'm on now, I'm a lot better, but
Nice.
I just like to like follow an instinct and cut really fast and stack up a bunch of options and then disable and enable clips, and when I'm going really fast, I can't be bothered to make sure I'm putting the sound effect on the right track. I feel like I have to get it out of me as quickly as possible, and that ends up being
Mm.
a little bit messy. Um, Luckily, like uh, I have my own weird internal logic, and I have a memory of like I can like right now I can picture what the timeline looked like for the fanny pack fight. I know exactly where the stacks were and where uh, you know. Um, but yeah, it was Ashish DeMello and Zoe Mao, and Zoe was with us through shooting and all the way through most of it before she had to leave to actually cut her own feature.
Nice.
Uh,
That's cool.
they did an incredible job of just keeping everything sane and making sure that nothing got lost.
And this was all in
In Premiere,
Premiere?
yeah, we cut
Awesome.
it all in Premiere, and we had this like we got access to productions before it was released through the Premiere people, and they were really really helpful, and because we were pushing Premiere hard with this movie. I mean, we were
Mhm.
time remapping on a clip and also then pushing in, resizing and doing moves on the footage and then just going nuts with it. And they made it all work. And that was really, really nice to just know that we had like literally a team of engineers who we could shoot
You
an
could
email
lean
to and
on.
be like, how do we do this thing? We can't figure this out. And they, calmly call us and walk us through it.
One of the other things I was thinking watching this film is how much B-roll of just people on a key with
Yeah.
strobe lights do you have access to?
Oh
Because I
yeah.
can't imagine.
I mean, it was also they did a lot of as much as they could. They did practical. So whenever they were in a new location with Michelle, they would throw her in front of the camera in a medium shot and
Really?
shoot that shot.
Wow.
So you'll see some of any location that they were in with Michelle, they have that shot
Wow.
and whatever
Yeah.
outfit she was in.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they did a ton of green screen stuff, and then Zach Stoltz and the whole VFX team just went nuts. And I can't believe what they did, because I didn't see any of that stuff until the finished film. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, there's a lot of really hilarious green screen footage that exists out there.
That's a really good point that I ask a lot of people, and sometimes it varies. But like, what was this is a really abstract question, but like, what was the final version of the film that you handed off? Was there? Are we talking like little to no sound effects, or like little to no VFX, or what? What does it look
Yeah,
like for you when you hand it off?
I try to hand it off. I always have uh, this thought that anything I hand off, if it somehow got into the wrong hands and leaked, I would want to be proud of it and feel
Mm.
like it's a movie.
Yeah.
It's as done as as it's watchable.
Mhm.
And so I heavily, heavily, heavily sound design, because
Oh, that's
there's a
cool.
lot of times too where I just don't know. I don't think you can tell if a scene is working sometimes if you're not sound designing, if you're not making sure that the rhythm of the sound effects and the footsteps are matching the door that closes in the background and the breath of the actor and the sigh, and and then the air conditioning coming on in the background. It's so helpful. Um, and then also Zach Stoltz and the team of VFX artists did a ton of temp effects for us from the shoot. Really,
Mhm.
Zach was temping stuff up as they were shooting, so we did end up by the end having a lot. Basically, everything we had some version of the VFX for. There were maybe a couple bagel shots on the stairways, where I had just thrown a JPEG of a bagel up there.
Nice.
But for the most part, it was a movie that you could watch and enjoy and not think, "Wow, this is gonna be great when it's finished." Except for the music, which Sun Lux had given us a bunch of temp cues,
Mhm.
but what they did once I saw the final film was just it pushed it into such a different tier of of a movie that I think was one of the biggest differences in my final cut and the cut that's in theaters now, is just how incredible the music has gotten.
Interesting. Yeah, that's it. The soundtrack really does stand out. It is such a good, and you
Yeah,
talk about like the loudness of like the cuts in like a metaphorical sense, but like there are some really good cuts that are like loud in just
yeah,
the loud
totally.
term. And you're
Yeah,
like, wow, this is awesome.
totally. Yeah, and a lot of that was done in the offline was sound design, but then everything that they did just amplified it.
Mhm. So one of my last questions I've got is like, out of all the quick cuts that happen in succession, the one that stood out to me the most is, and it may be a very simple answered question,
Yeah,
is whose idea was it, or how did y'all get access to the live action, like real life Michelle Yeoh footage from TBS?
yeah, yeah. That was always part of the plan. I remember reading the script and getting the dailies and realize like, oh, I thought, I was wondering if they were going to shoot some fake red carpet stuff, and then they were like, just go on Getty and on Five or wherever, and pull whatever you can find. And so that made me really excited. So, and there's such like incredible footage of Michelle on red carpets and
Mhm.
so many different looks, and you could just see the glamour. It felt like such a shock to the system after seeing the Michelle as Evelyn that's in the movie, as this just
Yeah.
worn out laundromat owner doing her taxes. And so yeah, we cut that pretty early, and it was like very obvious that it was going to work and that it was going to be a really fun part of the movie. And I think I remember like I just chose the best footage,
Mhm.
and at one point it was just we were like, maybe we should find some cheaper stock footage, or cheat it and just the same, you know, use the same clip a couple times. And but A24 came through and was willing to like put down the money for these weird red carpet shots, and it ended
Nice.
up being incredible.
Well, awesome. I mean, the time has completely flown by.
Yeah,
Thank
totally.
you so much, man, for
Yeah, thank
coming
you.
on and everything. The movie was
Thanks for having me.
awesome.
Thank
If
you very
anybody
much.
hasn't seen it, you can go to your theater right now, and you should, because it's a great, great movie. Is there anywhere, Paul, that you would like to send people, like a Twitter or an Instagram or anything like that?
No, I don't have any of that stuff.
All right. Well, I will reiterate, go see the movie. That's how you can
Yeah,
thank Paul, is you can go see the movie.
great.
So thank you guys so much. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter. We are the Justin Editor Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.